my name is Alexis Feynman, and I'm a renter in San Anselmo. I've lived in San Anselmo for 7 or 8 years, but I grew up in the Ross Valley, so this is definitely home. And I'm a pretty committed climate advocate, climate activist, and I'm very involved in local climate policy here in San Anselmo and to an extent in the county and beyond. So this is my log cabin. It's a literal log cabin. I've heard it's one of 2 in San Anselmo. The other is the Dugout Bar by Memorial Park. So as a renter, it can obviously be really hard to make certain decisions around the property and the home that you rent. I got really lucky in that my cabin actually has a heat pump mini split heater. So it heats and cools, it's a fan, it's unbelievable, super efficient, and the whole unit gets cooled in like 3 minutes, or heated in 3 minutes when I turn it on. In the place I was renting prior, would use mostly window AC and to cool during the summer. One of the things to note is that even though it's important to get mini splits, it's also really important to conserve and be efficient with the energy used when cooling, especially on hot days. It can strain the grid. The grid is dirtier during certain hours in the afternoon when more energy is on, the energy demand increases. So trying to conserve energy from 4 to 9. And then across from the mini split, it blows right into these beautiful sliding glass doors. And obviously that's one of the really poor insulation, so the heat or the cool can just go straight out. And so what I try to do is I actually got insulating shades that were about $30. They're adhesive, so you don't have to drill. It's really great for renters. And they just add an extra layer of insulation to help conserve energy and keep the cold air that's blowing actually in the unit. All right, so this is my kitchen. It's small but mighty, and it does actually have a gas range and cooktop, which is actually not super common in ADUs. So as someone who's trying to use less gas, what I've done is I have an induction cooktop here, which is great. And then I have a toaster oven here, which even if the big one was electric, I think I'd use a toaster oven anyways. It works super well. So between these two, I pretty much almost never have to turn this on. And in addition to the climate reasons why we maybe want to not cook with gas, living in a small unit, the impacts to indoor air quality are actually much more pronounced. So, I'm cooking where I'm working and sleeping and socializing and whatever. So it's an extra incentive to really switch electric and make sure that the indoor air quality stays great. Out here right now, I have my electric vehicle, which as you can see is an e-bike. Purchasing an EV was not really financially an option for me when I was in the market for an EV. So I got an e-bike instead, and I would say that the majority of my trips are actually on bike, which is a lot of fun. So in terms of the e-bike, if you're a renter, a couple of things to note. If you live upstairs and you don't have secure bike parking downstairs, being sensitive to the weight, there's some good lower weight options because you'll have to be carrying it up and down. So I used to garden a lot. I'm not super actively gardening right now, but there's a couple of tricks as a renter that have helped save water while gardening and make sure that plants are getting adequately watered. One of the things that I did was I took some old kombucha bottles, took a glass drill bit and drilled a little hole in the bottom, and I just leave these in the planters, and then I have a gray water bucket and I just kind of pour it in, and then the water drips out slowly through the hole. So it's essentially I call it a decentralized gray water drip irrigation system. All right, so when it comes to food prep and cooking, I try and buy a lot of bulk. So I have jars with, legumes and grains and sugar up there. Good Earth is, about a 5-minute bike ride, 10-minute walk down the road. So it's really easy to buy bulk. And in terms of, which buying bulk helps cut down on plastic waste, of course. In terms of composting, I don't have, an outdoor garden compost setup. So what I do is I put actually all my compost in the freezer, in a bin in the freezer, and then just take it out once a week prior to garbage day. Another great way to save energy, especially in the summer, is just to use a clothesline. Right now it's in the shade, but it does get some sun and things dry super quick. So one final thing about being a renter who's really committed to reducing one's carbon footprint is a lot of the time the conversation is around, buy this, buy that, etc. And I think as renters, it's hard. Like, we can't buy the heat pump, we can't purchase the solar panels, and so the types of changes that we can make are different. But one of the things I just wanted to call out is that, living in a small space and living light and, purchasing secondhand, all that kind of stuff is actually really, really important. And I think that there's a lot to celebrate for Marin's renters in terms of the ways that we can be contributing to the movement beyond, purchasing things that are just out of our control to do. So in terms of, inspiration, I think there's some great resources locally. I joined Resilient Neighborhoods a number of years ago, and being in a cohort of people who are all committed to taking action to address climate change in their lives is a really great way to learn about new things and to have some accountability and actually making some switches. That was partly what inspired me to actually get the e-bike. I spend a lot of time thinking about, how do we get systems to change on a much bigger picture, like through policy, locally, regionally, state, etc. And there are always a lot of questions like, is it good to focus on personal behavior, personal actions? And I think it's a both and. I think that in actually going through some of the steps, trying to live, more ecologically light, a more sustainable lifestyle, it's helped me better understand the ways in which our systems need to shift and adapt to really meet the moment that we're in. I would say there's also great resources in Sustainable Marin. Green Change has a really active listservs and threads. People are always sharing tips. And then many, if not all, towns and cities in Marin have a climate action commission that's filled with people who are really dedicated to taking action to curb the climate crisis.